Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. Have you ever seen somebody get fired and somehow walk away richer than everyone in the building? Yeah, that's pretty much what happened at Texas A&M. In November 2023, Jimbo Fisher didn't just get fired. He got paid $77 million to leave. Let that sink in. They literally said, "Hey Jimbo, thanks. But nah, here's the biggest check anyone's ever handed a fired coach, and please go home." And the wildest part? He didn't have to lift a finger for it. No recruiting, no game plans, no late night meetings, nothing. Just cashing checks until 2031. First, a massive $19.2 million in his pocket. Then about $7.2 million every single year after that. That's not a buyout. That's a luxury retirement plan. And it all came from one contract he signed in 2021, a 10-year, $95 million deal that gave Texas A&M almost zero wiggle room. If they fired him, they owed him everything. No loopholes, no discounts, no escape. So when they fired him, they knew exactly what they were signing up for. Why'd they do it? Because he started 6-4, and the athletic director basically said the quiet part out loud. "We want this program to reach its full potential." Translation: for this kind of money, we needed a whole lot more. You see, this is the largest buyout in college football history. No one's ever been paid more for doing less than Jimbo Fisher. But trust me, Jimbo's story is only the start. If you think $77 million to walk away is insane, wait until you hear what other schools have paid to get rid of their coaches. This rabbit hole only gets deeper and way more ridiculous. Brian Kelly, LSU. Sometimes someone lands the biggest job of their life, only for everything to explode right in their hands. That's exactly what happened with Brian Kelly at LSU. LSU brought him in after the 2021 season, handed him a 10-year deal worth around $95 million, and basically said, "You're the guy, fix everything." And to be fair, it looked like he might. He won games, a lot of them, but LSU didn't want solid seasons. They wanted national titles. They wanted another Joe Burrow type run. Then, October 26, 2025 happened. LSU loses at home. Fans boo. Everything feels tense. And then it happens. Brian Kelly gets fired in the middle of a 5-3 season, but this is where things flip from football drama to straight up soap opera. LSU fires him without cause, which means they owe him around $53 to $54 million because his contract promised him 90% of whatever money was left if they let him go. Huge number, right? But then LSU suddenly tries to change the story. After firing him, they start arguing that he might actually be fired with cause. And if it's for cause, LSU doesn't owe him anything. Not a cent, zero, absolutely nothing. So now LSU is basically saying, "Wait, we didn't fire you the normal way." And Brian Kelly is saying, "Oh yes you did, now pay me." And the craziest part? Kelly turns down a $25 million settlement. Then he turns down $30 million. He wants every single dollar, paid monthly, all the way through 2031. He went 34-14, which is great at most schools. But LSU isn't most schools. LSU wants rings and trophies, not almost. So instead of patience, LSU ended up with a lawsuit, national headlines, and one of the strangest buyout fights college football has ever seen. If you think a $54 million battle over firing paperwork is wild, wait until you hear what happened with the next coach. James Franklin, Penn State. Have you ever watched someone become such a big part of a place that it feels impossible to imagine them anywhere else? That was James Franklin at Penn State. 12 years, more than 100 wins. He lived through pressure, drama, expectations, and everything. He took over in 2014, right after the Sandusky disaster, when the whole program felt like a house with broken windows. He rebuilt it, cleaned it up, and made it feel whole again. So how does a guy like that end up pushed out the door and almost walking away with $49 million? Here's where everything flipped. In 2021, Penn State gave Franklin a massive extension, a 10-year, $85 million deal that locked him in through 2031. Buried inside that contract was something called a mitigation clause. It basically means if the coach gets fired and gets another job, he doesn't get paid the full buyout. Simple enough until reality hits, because in October 2025, everything went sideways. Penn State starts the season 3-3, lost to UCLA, lost to Northwestern. Fans aren't just frustrated, they're exhausted. And on October 12th, 2025, the school fires Franklin, just like that. After 12 seasons, after 104 wins, at that moment, the buyout price was sitting at $48 to $49 million. Imagine firing someone and still being on the hook for the cost of a small sports arena. That's the kind of number that keeps athletic directors awake at 2 a.m. But But here's the twist, the part nobody expected. Franklin didn't get $49 million, not even close. Right after he was fired, Virginia Tech calls. Talks move fast, and by November 2025, Franklin becomes their new head coach. The second he took that job, the mitigation clause dropped like Thor's hammer. Penn State didn't owe $49 million anymore. They owed $9 million. A buyout that could have been historic got sliced down instantly, not by a loophole, but because Franklin jumped straight into another job. So now Penn State moves forward with money freed up, and Franklin gets a brand new start with a big paycheck waiting for him in Blacksburg. Gus Malzahn, Auburn University. Imagine pulling off one of the craziest wins in college football history and still getting fired, but paid $21 million a few years later just to leave the job. That's the Gus Malzahn story at Auburn. He comes in at the end of 2012, takes over for the 2013 season, and it's like someone hit the turbo button on Auburn football. That first year was insane. You've got the wild turnaround, the miracle finishes, and of course, the kick six against Alabama. Crowd losing their minds, Auburn running the missed field goal back for a touchdown, Saban staring at the scoreboard like, what just happened? That play alone turned Malzahn into a legend. And on top of that, Auburn goes all the way to the national championship game. So what does Auburn do after that kind of magic? They double down. At the end of 2017, they hand him a 7-year, $49 million extension. That's not just a contract. That's Auburn showing proudly a billboard to the whole SEC that this is our guy. We're all in. We're paying big because we expect to win big. And for a while, it looked fine on paper. Over 8 seasons, Malzahn goes 68-35 overall, 39-27 in the SEC. Those numbers aren't bad at all. That's a lot of wins in the toughest conference in college football. He beats good teams, he has big moments, he keeps Auburn in the mix. But here's the problem. Once you've tasted that 2013 high, pretty good doesn't feel good anymore. After that early peak, Auburn never really got back to that same level. 2018, 2019, solid but not scary. Good seasons, not great ones. And in the SEC, good starts to feel like stuck. You're facing Alabama, LSU, Georgia. Every year feels like a test you're supposed to pass with an A+, not a B-. Then comes 2020, COVID year, which was a weird season. Auburn finishes 6-5, including 6-4 in conference. No titles, no real momentum, just more of that fine, but not what we're paying for feeling. And that's when Auburn snaps. On December 13th, 2020, they fire Gus Malzahn. Now here's where the money part hits like a truck. Because of that big 2017 extension, Auburn doesn't just say goodbye and move on. They owe him a buyout of $21.45 million. Let's break that down for a second. Extension, about $49 million over 7 years. Fired before the deal ends. Contract says, if we fire you without cause, we still owe you a huge chunk. So Auburn chooses to move on, and the bill for that choice is $21.45 million. It gets even crazier. Around $10.275 million, almost half, had to be paid within 30 days of him being fired. At the time, that buyout was one of the largest in the entire FBS. They basically paid the price of a small sports building just to say, we're done. Why? Because the bar at Auburn wasn't winning seasons. The bar was beat Bama, chase titles, look like 2013 again. His offense, the thing he was known for, started to stall. The fireworks weren't as bright. One ESPN breakdown even pointed to offensive woes as a key reason they pulled the plug. High pay, high expectations, medium results. In a place like Auburn, that math doesn't work for long. Billy Napier, University of Florida. Florida didn't just fire Billy Napier, they fired him and still owe him about $21 million for the privilege. Let's walk through how that even happens. First, picture the mood in Gainesville back in late 2021. Florida wasn't where they wanted to be. The program felt a little lost. The fans wanted a reset, a grown-up plan, some kind of we're building something message. So they go get Billy Napier. They don't just hire him quietly. They commit to him. He signed a 7-year deal worth about $51.8 million. His salary starts in the low $7 million range and goes up each year. And the contract? That's where it gets serious. Buried in the fine print is a buyout clause that basically says, if we fire you without cause, we still owe you about $21.2 million. Not only that, but the deal says if they let him go, he gets 85% of his remaining pay. And here's the really wild part. There are no offsets. That means if Napier goes and gets another job somewhere else, Florida doesn't just get to knock that off the bill. The buyout doesn't automatically shrink because he's earning money somewhere else. That's a very friendly contract for him. Now, fast forward a few years. By the time we reach the 2025 season, the pressure is on. Florida is a proud blue blood program. They've had Tebow, titles, insane atmospheres. The fan base is not built for patience, but the results under Napier, they're mid. The 2025 season starts, and the Gators stumble out of the gate. They're sitting at 3-4, not climbing, not trending, just kind of stuck. By this point, the overall record under Napier is 22-23. That's a losing record after 4 seasons at Florida. For a school that sees itself as one of the big boys, that's not just disappointing, that's embarrassing. Boosters start talking. Fans start yelling. The feeling isn't, oh, this will turn around. It's, how much longer are we doing this? So on October 19th, 2025, Florida makes the call. They fire Billy Napier. And the second they do that, the contract wakes up. The buyout kicks in. Florida now owes him about $21 million. The payment plan is laid out, around $10.6 million due within 30 days, basically half the buyout up front. Then about $2.65 million every July 15th in 2026, 2027, 2028, and 2029. That's 4 summers of cutting him checks, while he's not the coach there anymore. And remember, because the deal doesn't have offsets, Florida doesn't automatically save money if Napier lands another job and starts earning a new salary. They lock themselves into a very expensive breakup fee. All that risk, all that guaranteed money for a coach who never even put together a winning overall record. Charlie Weis, University of Notre Dame. Notre Dame once thought they'd found their genius. Then they paid almost $19 million just to make him go away. This is the story of Charlie Weis. Picture this. It's late 2004, early 2005. Notre Dame wants to be back. The glory days, the big games, all that history. They go searching for a savior and land Charlie Weis, the hotshot offensive coordinator from the New England Patriots. He takes over for the 2005 season, and his first contract is solid, around $2 million a year. Big, but normal for Notre Dame. Then the hype train starts rolling. Weis shows early promise. The offense looks sharper. Notre Dame suddenly feels dangerous. In 2006, they won 10 games and made a major bowl. The media is buzzing. Fans are excited. It finally feels like the sleeping giant is waking up, and this is where Notre Dame panics in the wrong direction. In October 2005, right in the middle of that early excitement, they decide, we can't lose this guy. So they hand Weis a 10-year extension, reported to be between $30 and $40 million, meant to lock him in through 2015. 10 years, huge guarantees, all based on potential and one hot start. But the seasons keep coming. Across 5 years, 2005 to 2009, Weis goes 35-27. Not awful, but not Notre Dame is back either. 2006 was the peak. After that, the wheels start shaking. 2008, 7-6 with ugly losses. 2009, 6-6. And at Notre Dame, 6-6 is a disaster. On November 30th, 2009, they fire him. And now that massive extension comes back to bite them. Tax filings later reveal the total: $18,967,960 in buyout money, about $6.6 million up front, then roughly $2.05 million a year for 6 more years. Notre Dame kept cutting checks through 2015, long after he was gone. No NIL era, no giant playoff money, just one coach, 5 seasons, no titles, and nearly $19 million to say goodbye. Willie Taggart, Florida State University. Florida State didn't just change coaches, they hit the eject button, and it cost them close to $18 million. And the crazy part? It happened after just 21 games. When Willie Taggart took the Florida State job in December 2017, it looked like a dream move. He left Oregon to come to Tallahassee, and on paper, it made sense. Big brand, rich history, national titles in the trophy case, and a fan base that lives and breathes football. Florida State wasn't trying to be good. They were trying to be Florida State again. Bowl games, top 10 rankings, night games under the lights where the place feels like it's shaking. That was the assignment. Fix this? Bring us back? And the school didn't just hand him a whistle and say good luck. They handed him a serious contract. Built into that deal was a very important line. If FSU fired him without cause, they owed him 85% of whatever money was left on his contract. At the time of his firing, that worked out to somewhere between $17 and $18 million. That's not just a parachute, that's a golden couch to land on. But the game still had to be played. Taggart's first season in 2018 was rough. Florida State went 5-7. That wasn't just another down year. It was their first losing season season since 1976, and the first time they missed a bowl game in decades. For most programs, that's painful. For Florida State, that's a full-on crisis. Year 2 was supposed to be the bounce back. Instead, 2019 starts shaky. They're sitting at 4-5, the offense is up and down, the energy feels off, the team doesn't look like the Florida State people grew up watching. And here's the thing about big-time programs. They don't wait around when they're angry. On November 3rd, 2019, right in the middle of the season, Florida State pulls the plug. They fire Willie Taggart after just 21 games and a 9-12 record. That's barely enough time to unpack your office, and they're already showing you the door. And this is where the buyout monster shows up. Because FSU didn't just fire him early. They fired him early with that 85% clause still attached. By letting him go without cause, they triggered the full hit, around $17 to $18 million, owed to a coach who had been there less than 2 full seasons. They had to keep paying him long after he stopped walking the sideline in garnet and gold. In fact, Florida State didn't finish paying off that buyout until January 31st, 2024. Think about that. 3 different seasons, new coaches, new players, new problems, and somewhere in the background, money is still being wired out because of a decision they made in 2017. Ed Orgeron, Louisiana State University. How do you go from building one of the greatest teams ever to getting paid almost $17 million to walk away in less than 2 years? Ed doesn't start as the shiny, perfect hire. He's the interim guy in 2016, the patch job, the we'll see what happens coach. But he fits LSU. The voice, the energy, the passion. He sounds like the program. He feels like Louisiana. Then 2019 happens, and it's like a movie. LSU goes 15-0. Joe Burrow wins the Heisman. The offense looks like it's from the future. Records everywhere. Teams getting blown off the field. They don't just win the national championship. They crush everyone on the way there. For a minute, Ed Orgeron is a king in Baton Rouge. Trophies, awards, praise from every angle. This is peak LSU. This is, we might never see a team this good again type of stuff. You'd think that kind of season buys you a lifetime pass, right? Not at LSU. Right after the high, the slide starts. 2020 hits. COVID season. Players gone to the NFL. Staff changes. LSU isn't terrible, but they're nowhere near that 2019 monster. The magic is gone. Then 2021 comes, and things don't really get better. The record is average. The team doesn't look sharp. The same fire isn't there. For a fan base that just tasted 15-0 glory, average feels like a slap in the face. On October 17, 2021, LSU makes the call. Ed Orgeron will leave at the end of the season. They don't frame it as a messy firing. They call it a separation, but we all know what that means. LSU wants to move on. New direction, new coach, new era. But moving on comes with a price tag. Behind the scenes, LSU and Orgeron agree to a separation agreement that basically says, we're done, but we're still going to pay you. The total? Around $16.8 to $17 million. That puts his buyout at roughly $16.9 million, one of the biggest in college football at the time. The payments are spread out, about $5 million in December, right after the deal, then smaller chunks, around $1 million twice in 2022, and the rest paid out slowly, all the way through 2025. So while LSU is chasing its next big thing, it's still sending money to the guy who already delivered them a perfect season and a national title, and then flatlined. It's wild when you think about it. The same coach who gave them one of the best teams ever is the same coach they decided they couldn't keep, and they had to pay almost $17 million just to say goodbye. Tom Allen, Indiana University. Tom Allen got fired from Indiana and still walked away with $15.5 million from a school that isn't even a football powerhouse. Yeah, this isn't Alabama money. This is Indiana money. Here's how wild this one is. Indiana lets Tom Allen go in November 2023. At that moment, on paper, they actually owed him about $20.8 million because of a contract extension he signed in 2021 that ran through 2027. $20.8 million at Indiana for football. So the school has a problem. They don't want to keep him, but they also don't want to eat $21 million. So the athletic director, Scott Dolson, starts working the numbers. They sit down, talk it out, and instead of paying the full $20.8 million, they agree on a negotiated negotiated buyout of $15.5 million. It's basically the middle point, the original $20.8 million if they fired him before December 1st, 2023, versus the roughly $8 million they would have owed if they waited until after December 1st, 2024. They split the difference and land on $15.5 million. Still massive, but it saves the school over $5 million, and they don't even drag it out for years. The money comes in two big hits, $7.75 million within 10 days of firing him by November 26, 2023. Another $7.75 million right after New Year's, between January 1st and January 5th, 2024. Two giant checks. Boom, done. Now, here's where this deal goes from big to you've got to be kidding me. In most coaching contracts, there's a rule called an offset or mitigation clause. Simple version. If you get fired, but then get another job, the money from your new job reduces what your old school has to pay you. Indiana and Tom Allen, they take that rule out in the final deal. No offset, no discount, no, we get to pay you less if you land on your feet. So when Allen later gets hired as defensive coordinator at Penn State for 2024 and then moves to Clemson in 2025, all that new salary he's making, it does nothing to lower Indiana's bill. He's getting paid by his new schools and still cashing Indiana's buyout money in full. And just to make it even more eye-opening, the entire $15.5 million came from athletic department donor money, not from regular university funds. Boosters literally paid millions just to help move on from a coach at Indiana, a place not exactly known as a football monster. This wasn't Alabama. This wasn't Ohio State. This was a basketball school cutting the largest buyout in Big Ten history at the time, all for a coach with mixed results, not trophies. Tom Herman, University of Texas. Texas basically paid over $24 million to say, yeah, this isn't good enough. And Tom Herman was right in the middle of that. When Texas hired Herman, he was supposed to be the guy. This was the we're fixing Texas football move. Big name, big energy, big promises. Over 4 seasons, his record was 32-18. A lot of programs would be happy with that. But Texas isn't a lot of programs. They wanted Big 12 titles, playoff runs, a real Texas is back moment. And when that didn't happen, the patience meter hit 0. By January 2021, Texas decides to pull the plug. Here's where the money part goes crazy. Herman still had 3 years left on his 5-year contract. That means there was still a big chunk of guaranteed money sitting there. To fire him, Texas had to cut him a check for around $15.4 million. That's just for Herman. Then you add his staff. Because when you fire a head coach, most of the assistants go too, and those guys also have contracts. So Texas owed around $9 million more to buy out the assistant coaches' deals. Now the total cost of just ending the Herman era, we're talking over $24 million. And this is where it gets kind of dark. All of this is happening right after the athletic department had laid off 35 employees, asked nearly 300 people to take temporary pay cuts, blamed it on the money hit from the COVID-19 pandemic. So on one hand, regular workers are losing jobs and paychecks. On the other hand, the school is spending more than $24 million to get rid of a coach who was still winning more than he was losing. Then, almost immediately after firing Herman, Texas hires Alabama offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian. Sark doesn't come cheap. His salary adds even more to the bill. By the time you add Herman's $15.4 million, his staff's $9 million, Sarkisian's multi-million contract, the total cost of this coaching change jumps well past $40 million, all because 32-18 wasn't good enough.